Good day, everyone, and welcome to another discussion on strategic planning. And this time we will be dealing with or discussing the development of implementation matrix. All right. So, what is an implementation matrix now? So, the implementation matrix is a bridge between the strategic plan and operational plan. And as we discussed before, that a strategic plan outlines our mission, the vision, and of course the goals of the organization that would take like 3 to 5 years. No, and it also takes into account how you'll measure those goals and the major projects that you'll take on to meet them. While in the operational plan, it usually outlines what your department will focus on for the near future. So usually ito ay projects for the upcoming year. And operational plan is otherwise known as the work plan. Now, at this stage of the implementation matrix, no, the organization identifies and prioritizes the projects that need to be undertaken to achieve the goals and objectives of the strategic plan. Right? Now, the resources required for the projects, the people responsible for them, the timelines, the success factors, and the risks involved are identified in this area. Right? So later on, we'll be looking at the examples of the implementation matrix. Right? Now, the projects identified relate to the entire strategic plan period as well. And the implementation matrix gives the reader of the strategic plan or the SP a very detailed picture on how the plan will be implemented. Okay, so what are the strategies that will be used on achieving the plan that we have? All right. So in the implementation matrix, we could see here the detailed picture of how our plans will be achieved. Right. Now, example. Our goal is to improve the quality of education system. Okay. Now, what could be our objective here? Could be to enhance the LMS or the learning management system. And as we all know, the old LMS before or the old LMS is no longer that applicable in the LMS that we're using in the online learning, for example. Right? So we need to enhance it. We need to pattern the activities, the quizzes, and such. That's why, um, for example, UC adopted um, Canvas as their or as our LMS or the learning management system. Okay, so what could be the projects that we could do? Number one here is to update existing LMS programs. Yun na nga, nag-upgrade tayo dun sa ating um, project or sa ating LMS, which is Canvas. Alright? Next, we could also adapt an updated LMS programs for online learning, which is the Canvas. And of course, we need to be trained. Okay, first of all, there were a series of webinars that we attended before we rolled out the Canvas program. All right, so the train faculty members and students to the new LMS. Right, so that could be an example of a matrix that we could use. All right, but later on we'll be talking about it more. All right. Now, what are the preconditions? Anong kinakailangan in the implementation matrix. So before taking this stage, the goals, objectives, and performance measures need to be in place. So these are the needed things before the matrix that we are going to do. All right. Now, who should be involved? Number one here is the SPT. In every organization, the number one person that needs to know the matrices would be our SPT. Okay, and of course, the senior management and the head of the organization. Right, like the VP for academics. Sabihin natin sa school ito, ano? VP for academics, like VP for finance, the president, vice president, and of course the other senior management. What else? Inside and outside stakeholders. Of course, inside we know the faculty members or the staffs of the organization, and the outside stakeholders would be our customers, or let's say in an educational setting, this would be the parents and students, and of course other partners like sabihin nating government partners like CHED and some more. Okay. Now let's talk about the process of the implementation matrix. Okay. So the processes involved are as follows. No? So let's take a look at it. So the SPT or the strategic planning team should send out the goals, objectives, and performance measures that was agreed upon as a previous stage to the concerned operational units or heads. Now, we already know what our objectives are, also the goals, and of course, performance measures. This was discussed in our midterms. No? So, these goals, objectives, and performance measures na pag-usapan should be um, like be given to the operational heads, like for example, department heads of the organization. Okay. Now, the operational heads, together with the staffs, should suggest projects that would be necessary to achieve the goals and objectives. So, dito yung they can have meetings if what could be the project that they could do. Right? Now, this is also the time of listing projects. Like a brainstorming process could be followed to list out all projects that can be undertaken to achieve the goal and its objectives. Right? So in listing the projects, the time frame for their completion, the resources required, and the expected outputs from the projects should be stated as well. So we have there the time frame, of course, the budget, what are the expected outputs, and other things that could be listed in creating the implementation matrix. Also, we prioritize these listed projects. Okay, so the listed projects can then be prioritized on the basis of the following criteria. Number one here is the degree of impact. All right. So, in determining the degree of impact, the following could be considered. All right. So, is our implementation matrix showing a tangible result? Sorry, excuse me. Okay. Okay, ba? Is there a good result that we are getting from the project? What else? Level of contribution to the achievement of goals and objectives, right? So, is our matrix good enough to show a good contribution, sorry, to the achievement of the goals and objectives? Maganda ba? All right, and synergy with other projects, meaning to say, is there a high leverage potential that is very useful, that is our project, okay, is in coordination with other projects. Okay, so is there a synergy of it? All right. Now, second is the resources. Okay, so the resources would include funds and other resources such as human resources. Okay, so is our budget enough? Is the manpower enough for us to create this kind of stuff? All right. Now, if we already check the things needed, now we develop an implementation matrix. Okay, so the development of implementation matrix. Okay, so the matrices prepared by the different operational units should then be consolidated by the SPT into one implementation matrix for the organization's strategic plan. Okay, then the prioritized projects should be set out in an implementation matrix format. Okay, so let me show you a short, or I mean, just an example of an implementation matrix format, right? So here we have there the goal, the objectives, projects, time frame, budget, responsible person, and progress. Okay, so our example earlier was the enhancement of the LMS. Okay, that's our objective, but then the goal is to improve the quality of education. Okay, so what are the projects? We have three: update existing LMS, adapt and updated LMS programs for online learning, and train faculty members and students to the new LMS. Okay, so let's say our time frame is from 2019 to 2025. And let's say we have enough budget, let's say 1.25 million, right? And responsible person that we could put here would be our president of the organization and the operational heads, different heads of the organization. And let's track the progress. Is it ongoing or is it completed already? Let's say dahil ang time frame natin is 2019 to 25, it's still ongoing. Okay? So this is just an example of format that we could follow in developing the implementation matrix. Right? So that's about it. Now, our next topic here is about documenting the strategic plan. Right? In documenting the strategic plan, this is one of the very important thing that we should do. All right. Now, what is required to document a strategic plan? Okay. So, working through the previous stages for the strategic planning process, the organization has formulated vision, mission, values, goals, objectives, and performance measures. Okay? So, ito na yung mga nadaanan nating mga discussions. Okay, about the vision, mission, values, goals, etc., etc. Now, these elements of the strategic plan need to be put together in a cohesive and attractive fashion. Okay, so this is done at the stage of documenting the strategic plan. Right? Now, what should be included in the plan's format, and how it should be presented? Okay, so this is now the content of the document. What should be included in the plan? What is the format of our plan? And how will we present it in a nice way that could attract, like, for example, customers or the stakeholders? All right. Now, the documented plan is also considered as the final product of the strategic plan development phase. So, let's say this is the last step of strategic planning. Okay, it is the last phase. What else? It is also considered the organization's main communication and marketing tool. Right, as I've mentioned earlier, this has to be made in a way that could attract customers, could attract other businesses for partnerships, since it could be this could be created as a marketing tool. Okay, and of course to communicate what's within our organization and such. Right now, it is important for the organization to ensure that the plan is written in a language that is easily understandable. Simple, okay? Not to the point that there are words that is hard to understand that we need to use dictionaries. So in a simple way, or put the language in a layman's term, all right? So that um, it could be easy for us to understand what is the organization is trying to communicate. Okay. Now, what could be the contents of um, the document? Right, contents of a strategic plan document. Number one here is our table of contents. That is very important. Okay, that we could let's say this is a book. This is a document that we need table of contents for us to easily identify where we want to read first and such. Next is usually there's the introduction by the head of the organization. Let's say the president of the University of the Cordilleras. Next, we have an executive summary as well. Okay. Next, it includes our vision, mission, values, goals, and objectives, or the philosophy of the organization. Okay, what are their vision statements, mission statements, and such. What else? Performance measures and implementation matrix. Okay, so what are the performance measures that we will be putting here? Implementation matrix as well, or matrices and such. What else? Appendices, kung meron man. Alright? Or, I mean, appendices, this is needed. Results of analysis, like the results of past analysis and SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Right? We need to include these in the documents. And the organizational chart, okay, from top to bottom. And list of acronyms. This is very important for the readers to easily understand what is SP, what is SPT, okay? So it's easier, okay? And you can put here also the organizational history and profile, right? So if the organization was just created, then when was that? And what's the main purpose of the organization? Okay. Now, what are the preconditions of this of documenting the strategic planning? All right. So this step in the strategic planning process assumes that the vision, okay, the mission, the goals, objectives, and performance measures for the strategic plan are finalized. Okay, sabi na natin, this part of the process is the final stage, right? So writing skills play a vital part in documenting the strategic plan. Okay, so we need proofreading, formatting, and design competencies would also be required at this stage. Okay, proofread. What are the designs that we will be using, and of course, what's the format? Okay, Lalo na if it will be checked by, let's say, sabihin natin for educational setting, could be checked by the Commission on Higher Education or Department of Education and such. Okay, and who is or who should be involved? Okay, as with all previous stages, the SPT is responsible for the documentation of the strategic plan, okay, or the strategic planning team. So if the SPT members have the required writing skills, they can document the plan themselves, right? So they can also get assistance from internal or external sources to help them document the plan, wherein the SPT would also need the assistance of a proofreader and a design specialist to proofread and design the layout of the document. Okay, so such help can be available within the organization or can be sought from external sources, right? So the organization's management has to approve the final draft before publishing it. Okay. Now, what are the processes of this stage? Number one here is to determine the contents of the strategic plan document. All right. So besides the core components of the strategic plan, different organizations choose to provide different kinds of information in the strategic plan document. For example, organizational history or the organizational chart. Okay, a message from the head of the organization, an executive summary. Okay, what else? Critical success factors, etc., etc. Okay, so the strategic planning team, or yeah, the SPT, has to decide the contents of the strategic plan document. Okay, and in what sequence that the contents should be presented. Right. Again, if the SPT decide to provide more information about the strategic planning processes, um, example results, no, of SWOT analysis or the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and trends analysis, okay, or the gaps identified across domains, the SPT can include this material in annexes, okay, or appendices if they want it that way. So it is better to keep the body of the plan short and simple. Okay, so determine the contents of the strategic plan. Now, the second is to write the contents. Okay, again, the strategic planning team should write or arrange to have written those parts of the contents that had not been written earlier. For example, some description of each goal and objective, okay? The organization history, executive summary, etc., etc. Right? Now, the third one is the to proofread and design layout. Okay, so the completed draft strategic plan document should be sent for proofreading. Okay, and then the designer should then be called in to propose layout design for the document. So providing a graphical overview of the vision, mission, values, goals, and objectives may be a good idea as well. Okay? Pero depende na yan sa designer ng magbibigay ng layout. Now, the fourth one is to obtain approval and print. Okay? So a draft strategic plan should be developed by the SPT for the approval of the president, kunwari, or the head of the organization. So once the draft has been approved, the document can be printed. So that's now the last part of the documentation. Okay. So to summarize our discussion, let's do have some checklist, right? So in the first part of our discussion, the implementation matrix, Are projects directly related to achievement of the goals and objectives? Okay ba? Okay. So, timeframes of the projects realistic ba ito? Okay. Have all resources required for the project been identified? Okay. Saan na manggagaling ang ating resources? Sakto ba ang human resource natin? Sakto ba ang budget? Okay? Would it be feasible to find and provide the resources? Kung meron, then we can proceed with the implementation matrix or the development of implementation matrix. Okay? And in the documenting of strategic plan, okay, are all core elements of the strategic plan contained in the document? Andun ba lahat? Does the document convey the essence of the organization's strategy? Okay? Nasa tama ba? Okay? Or is it in line with our organization's strategy? Okay? Is the plan document easy to read and understand for the stakeholders? Okay, so ito yung sinasabi natin kanina na okay ba? Na ano ba natin? Na in layman's term ba ang ating mga ginagamit na words para hindi mahirapan? Okay? Is it logically structured? And is it visually attractive? Okay? So, yun yung mga kinakailangan nating makita sa part na ito. Right? So, that ends my discussion. Thank you so much for listening and have a good day.